Hello, welcome to Lesson 6-3, Number Sense, Decimal Multiplication. Our learning goal will be to use number sense and place value to multiply decimals. The location of a decimal point in a decimal multiplication calculation can be decided by reasoning about the relative size of the given numbers. So this means we want to make sure that our answer makes sense once we have done decimal multiplication. There are no vocabulary terms for this lesson, so we're going to go ahead and look at our first example. Our first example problem is 7/86 times 16. And if we did that multiplication out, we would get an answer that would look like 12,576. But we have to remember we're multiplying decimals, so 12,576 is not actually our answer, even though those are the digits in our answer. I want you to think of 7/86 just as 786, just where we're multiplying. So we would multiply the digits that would make up 786 times 16, and that would give us that answer of 12,576. But since there are two decimal places in the example, you'll see we have a decimal point that's between the 7 and the 8. So those two decimal places are where the 8 and the 6 are. Then there will be two places behind the decimal in the answer. So that means our decimal in our answer would go between the 5 and the 7, and our answer would be 125 and 76 hundredths. And that makes more sense, right? If we were multiplying something close to 8, which is what 786 is, times 16, 125 would be a much more reasonable answer than 12,576. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some practice problems. I want you to work through these on your own and then check your work with mine. Okay, for our first practice problem, we have 5 times 3 4/10. Okay, so I want you to remember we're going to work this problem using multiplication just like that decimal point wasn't even there. So we're going to go ahead and write it out the way it is, do the multiplication work, and then move our decimal point however many places it needs to be. Remember, think about if your answer is reasonable whenever you finish. Okay, when you're ready, go ahead and press play and we'll do the problem together. Did you write 17? Well, let's talk about and take a look at how we would get that answer. So if we have 3 4/10 times 5. Okay, we're going to do the multiplication and not even worry about that decimal point right here until we need it in our answer. 4 times 5 is 20. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 2 more is 17. Now this is where we talk about how we are going to determine where our decimal point goes in the answer. Right here we have one decimal place. Oops, my 7 disappeared. Okay, so that means we have got to move our answer, our decimal point over one decimal place, and so it would belong right there between the 7 and the 0. Now let's think about this. Is this answer reasonable? Well, 3 4/10 is close to 3, right? So if we have 3 times 5, we know that's 15. This is almost 3 1/2, so this would be reasonable. If I left this as 170, we would know that that's not a reasonable answer for a number that is close to 3 times 5. Okay, let's take a look at our next practice problem. Our next problem is 3 1/10 times 6 2/10. Pause, work the problem, and press play to check your answer. Did you write 19 22 hundredths? Let's work that out together. We have 3 1/10 times 6 2/10. And I'm just going to multiply them like those decimal points aren't there until I need them in the answer. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. Now I'm going to do 1 times 6 is 6, and 3 times 6 is 18. Do you see how I started doing my multiplication right here, and that's where I begin this answer? Some people like to put a 0 or an X here to hold their spot, their place, and that's great if that strategy works for you. Okay, now we're going to add 2, 12, 9, and 1. Now, we need to come up here and we have one decimal place from here to here and another decimal place from here to here. So that means in our answer, our decimal place has got to go over 2 places, and that would be between the 9 and the 2. And then think about, is this answer reasonable? 3 1/10 is very close to 3. 6 2/10 is very close to 6. So 3 times 6 is 18. So 19 would be a reasonable answer for this. If we had our decimal point in the wrong place, then if we checked for reasonableness, it wouldn't really make sense. So that's an important step to think about. Okay, let's look at practice problem number 3. Please work the problem and then press play to check your answer with mine. Did you write 24 hundredths? Well, let's take a look at this. So we have 6 tenths times 4 tenths. Okay, we're going to multiply this, not worry about those decimal points right now. 6 times 4 is 24. 0 times 4 is 0, plus 2 more is 2. Okay, then we have 6 times 0 is 0, and 0 times 0 is 0. Now we'll add. And then we have to see, where does our decimal point belong? Well, I have one decimal place here and another decimal place here. So I would need to move my decimal point over 2 places so it would belong between the 0 and the 2. And that would give us an answer of 24 hundredths. If you got that, good job. Let's take a look at our next practice problem. And this is a practice word problem. Madison is at the grocery store. She wants to buy 2 loaves of bread. If one loaf of bread cost $3.48, how much did she spend on bread? Now, take a look at this. Remember that when we work with decimals, that's like working with money. So in this example word problem, or this practice word problem, the decimal is actually shown as a dollar amount. Go ahead and try this problem on your own. Press play when you're ready to check it with me. Did you write it would be $6.96. I was beginning to read it like a decimal, which would be 6 96 hundredths, but we're working in money this time. Let's work this out together. So it's very important we have the dollar sign. That's like our label. So we have $3.48, and then if one loaf of bread is how much that was, and we're getting 2 loaves of bread, so we're going to multiply $3.48 times 2. So 8 times 2 is 16. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 more is 9, and 3 times 2 is 6. Now we have to see where our decimal point goes. We have 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places. So we start here and count over 1, 2, and that would be $6.96. It's very important for us to put the dollar sign there so people know that we're working in money. So 2 loaves of bread would cost $6.96, and that's reasonable. We have our loaves of bread that are about $3.50 a piece, and we have 2 of them. 3 times 2 is 6, so the fact that we have 6 in the dollar amount lets us know that this answer is reasonable, and then we put our decimal place in the correct area. Okay, now it's time to challenge yourself. Emma says that 3 is a good estimate for 3 4/10 times 9 hundredths. Is she correct, and why? Show your work in your journal, explain your answer, and come back to school ready to check your answer tomorrow. So let's finish up. Please review your learning goal. Have you mastered it? Do you need to go back and review and practice again? In your journal, write down if you feel that you are at a 1, a 2, or a 3 in your learning. In your journal, write down 1 or more questions you still may have from this lesson. If you don't have any questions, you do not need to write anything down. See you tomorrow with your work done and ready to learn.